Hello and welcome back to Fitness with Apoorva with me AJ. This is a short hip opening or hip mobility routine that you will enjoy if you have tight hips, are sitting all day long or are suffering from back pain. So roll out your yoga mat, get into something comfortable and let's get started. But before we move on to the video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new here and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when I drop more videos. So our first stretch is a runner's lunge. So get into a kneeling position and from here, just straight out get your right leg to the front of the mat and gently make sure that your knees are directly on top of your ankles, and using your hands on your hips, turn your tailbone down to the mat so that your spine is straight. And gently lower your hips down to the mat. You will feel your hip flexors opening up right here. You can also place your hands down on the mat to give yourself a little bit of a stability. But if you're stable enough here and you know that you're able to balance, you can lift yourself off. Use your hands on your hips and continue to guide your hips down on the mat. This is an excellent stretch for your hip flexors, and most of the times our lower back pain stems from a tight hip flexor, which is why we're looking at stretching our quads gently and our hip flexors. Make sure that you're not pushing yourself forward but maintaining a straight spine. Make sure that your neck and shoulders are in a straight line and you can continue to gaze forward or down on the mat. Alright, bring your hands down and move on to the other leg. So bring your left leg forward this time. Make sure that your knee is directly above your ankle and that your knee at the back is supported. If you feel that you need a little bit of extra support, you can keep a towel or something underneath your knees so that you feel that your knee is supported. You can also place your hands on your knees and continue to push your hips downwards. Remember, forward and down is where we are wanting our stretch to go. It may feel a little overwhelming to someone who has really tight hips, so remember to be very gentle with your body. You can also place your hands down on spider fingers like this and continue to give yourself a nice hip flexor or a hip opening stretch. You can stay here for up to 7 to 8 breaths, and once you're done, you can come back to kneeling. Next up, we have butterfly stretch or Baddha Konasana. So if you're seated in a Sukhasana, gently guide your feet so that your knees are falling away from each other and the sides of your feet, that means the edge of your feet, should be gently touching each other. Open out your toes slightly apart and you can use your hands to guide your feet outwards. Alright? Once you're here, let gravity do its job and pull your knees down. You don't need to push or force anything as of now. Gently get your hips as close to your heels as possible, and wherever is your maximum flexibility level is perfect. Alright, always learn to honor your body. You can clasp your hands and place them right underneath so that you can get a little bit of leverage to pull yourself up. Keep your spine straight and guide your knees as close to the ground as possible. So you can stay here or you can make this a dynamic pose by slightly shifting your weight forward and back. The moment you start doing this, you will feel an opening in your inner thighs, and that is what we are looking for. You can use your elbows to slightly guide your feet away from each other, but make sure to honor your body and always listen to what your body is saying. So you can do around 5 to 6 rounds of this. Just make sure that you're being gentle, you're not forcing any movement, and you're meeting your body where it is. Next up, we have a pigeon stretch. So you can come into a downward facing dog for this. For that you'd need to get into a tabletop position. Gently lift your hips off the mat and stretch into a downward facing dog with your heels as close to the ground as possible. From there, lift your right foot off the mat and get it to the front. So place your right foot near the left hand and the right knee near the right hand, and then gently guide your hips down to the mat to get into a pigeon stretch. Now there is a tendency to start sitting on your side hip, but make sure that your hips are squared so that you can use your hands to guide your hips as well. Alright, some of you may have super hyper flexibility and your feet may be able to get parallel to the mat, but we are not looking at flexibility here, we are looking at opening out the hips. Alright, so place your spider hands on the mat and gently guide your seat bones into the mat. You can also make this a dynamic pose by gently shifting your body weight forward and back. The moment you start doing this, you will feel an opening in your glutes, and that is what we're looking for. It makes this pose that much more challenging, but it's excellent for your quads and your hip flexors. You can also guide yourself forward using your forearms and coming into a deeper form of pigeon stretch right here. You can also stack your fists and place your forehead on the fists and just gently relax here. This is more of a passive stretch. Continue to breathe as deeply as possible when you're in a pigeon pose, because this is a really deeply relaxing pose. Alright, once you're ready, gently lift yourself off the mat. Place your hands firmly into the mat, tuck your back toes and lift your heels up, getting back into downward facing dog. Let's do this quickly on the other side before we move on to the next pose. This is the dynamic pose and this is the passive one. Next up, we have dynamic wipers. So come into a seated position on your seat bones with your knees bent, hands at the back for support, and bring your feet as wide as your mat. From there, gently lower your knees down to one side and make sure that they are as close to the ground as possible without compromising the position of your chest. So try not to round your chest, but make sure that your chest stays lifted and your spine is straight. Move on to the other side. Dynamic wipers are excellent to open out and mobilize your hip flexors and the hip joint. So it's excellent to do this early in the morning as well. So this is a more dynamic version. Another way to get a passive stretch in the same version is to open out your feet at least more than hip distance apart. Bend your knees, place your hands at the back for support. Chest stays lifted, spine stays straight. And lower both your knees down in a 90-degree angle. So you can use your hands to physically guide your feet so that they make 90-degree angles. Open out your feet and you will feel like you're sitting in a half swastika. So opening out your feet, this is called a 90-90 as well. Opening out your hips and just stay here. To increase the stretch, you can also shift your weight forward just like we did in our pigeon, so that you feel the maximum effect of this pose. Remember, the more you start to twist, the more deep and intense this gets. So stay as much within your range as possible, and only if you want to challenge yourself should you take yourself up to the next level. Moving on to the other side, gently open out one knee and then the other, and you automatically, when you move on to the other side, you are in a 90-90 almost instantly. So make sure that your hip bones, that is your seat bones, are directly in contact with the mat, so that you're opening out your quads and not your hamstrings. Alright, so you're opening out and being mindful of your quads and not injuring any part of your body. Only go as far as your body allows you to, but make sure there's always room for a little bit of challenge. Excellent. Coming back to neutral spine. So these are my favorite hip mobility stretches, and I hope that you found this video useful. If you did, please don't forget to leave a comment below letting me know what part of this helped you the most and what more you would like to see on my channel. I post YouTube shorts every single day, so don't forget to go and check them out right here. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you in my next Namaste.